I feel like I need to defend my scene's honor here, because this is just turning into a bit of a dog battle.
Like in groups always look.
I'm cutting you off here. I'm cutting you off. Cutting you off. He said G2's winning it. He said G2's winning it.
We need to wait till the next EU tournament, which could be in about 10 years now.
Take it with like a grain of salt.
No,
but
that's
that
no
being
fun.
said,
Take it super literally.
Spike defused.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Press 4 to Defuse, your weekly source for Valorant esports news and discussion. Now, you might realize from counting the number of cameras we have up today that Sam is not with us. It's just myself and Ryan bringing you all of the action from this past week's VCT mashups. Ryan, how are you feeling right now?
I'll be honest, not very good considering some of the news that's come out today, but in regards to all of the stuff that we saw last week, some really good games, some really good storylines coming through, and you know, I think in regards to Europe and NA, their formats and stuff, you still got to say, challenges, very exciting tournament so far, and I can't wait to see the second bout come onto the scene for both regions and across the world, of course.
Yeah, absolutely. And we'll get into some of the news that you were hinting at sort of at the end of the show if people want to stick around to it. There are no games today. In case you're wondering, the VCT Open NA portion starts tomorrow for the second round at the Challengers Qualifier. Those games will be taking place tomorrow evening, I think, is when they're out. But we're going to be talking about some stuff today. We're going to be previewing what's going to be happening. We're going to be talking about what did happen. So stick with us here. Also, what a comment there in Twitch chat. Mike Winnick looks like Boss Baby. That's a new one. Haven't gotten that one before. I got to be honest, Ryan. That one's taking me off guard. I'm enjoying it. All right. We're headed into the topics, though. We're going to go ahead and talk about them. First up, we've got some announcements coming in from this last week. This is the big one, I would say. T1. Today we say our goodbyes to Brax and AZK. Unexpected, to be honest. I mean, I think AZK on the way out was expected because we knew that Automatic was linked to this roster. He is going to be coming in to replace them, but this is surprising. Brax was the player that they signed before there were Valorant teams, before Valorant was the name of the game. He was the first signed player for this game. He was the way T1 made a splash. Now he's on the out. Ryan, what do you make of it?
Yeah, him and Tens moving on from their initial rosters this early in the scene is a real question mark, certainly. But I do think the question is now, where is Brax and AZK going to go? A lot of people thought that they would head the same direction as Fraud, the coach that left prior, because he disagreed with some of the stuff that T1 was doing, right? So there's still a lot of question marks on where these guys are going to be going at least. And I would say that no matter where they go, I'm sure they'll make something work, but it's just such an awkward time to build a roster right in the middle of challenges, and for T1 to make this decision. From the sounds of it, though, it seems that it was Brax's and AZK's decision to leave, maybe based off previous things that had been happening.
Was it? This is so weird. This is such a weird situation. The announcement video, by the way, is definitely worth a watch purely because of how bizarre the context that T1 is putting out there. Their coach, their new coach, spends the entire announcement video praising Brax, saying he is one of, if not the most gifted, talented players in North America, but they're off the team, which is just a really weird tone to take. I'm wondering whether... It all goes back to that Fraud announcement where he said there were ethical differences that were leading to him leading the team. There's something going on with this org. There's something going on with this team. I mean, you remember way back when Crashies and Food left the team, they wanted to leave the team. They were the ones who agitated to be removed. Now we're seeing it play out again, potentially with Brax and AZK, where they might be motivating it, or maybe AZK was getting removed and Brax said, you know what, I'm out, or it's just a very weird situation. All in all, and I'm kind of curious where they're going to end up. You're right. It's a very awkward time to be building. I mean, Automatic coming over from CS, that presents an opportunity. He's obviously not attached to a roster, but who do you get for that fifth spot? And if so, you're going to need time for Automatic to get used to playing Team Valorant. Yes, he's been trying the game, but he's still going to need to adapt. Whoever you bring in as a fifth is going to need to adapt. You're going to need to rebuild this roster. You're going to miss your chance at the Valorant Champions Tour at the first go-around by the time this roster's figured out.
I think the coolest thing and a bit of theory that's come in is that the COO of Gen G followed Brax on Twitter, right? So that would be a really cool move, seeing Brax and Sean on the same team, for example, powering it up. And I think Brax has played with Kustra and stuff in the past as well, so there is a bit of synergy from these kind of players. But really, with everything that we've spoken about with Gen G, apparently that's what Reddit said, so I'm taking it at face value.
Were they on Twerks together at one point? I'm gonna have to look at their CS history.
You look at that, but yeah, like I think it's a big sign-in for whoever can pick him up. Maybe he goes to FaZe. That would be a good thing. But the question is, I guess, if you're Brax, do you want to be on the team with AZK? It seems like it. It seems that they want to keep that roster and that duo together, as they both left after the fraud left too. So maybe that's something that they're looking to do in the future. But they could go anywhere at this point, and there's so many rosters built up and unsigned rosters now being signed with stuff like version 1, for example, that they can kind of go from there and make something happen.
Yeah, it is definitely interesting. I would be surprised to see Gen G make a move at this point, just based on what I've been hearing out of their camp, is that they're very much still figuring out the team and figuring out how far this core can go before they're going to focus on making changes. And considering the fact that they, to be honest, overperformed in the challengers to my expectations, I'd expect them to see this get a little more time. But it is still fun to watch CEOs follow histories and figure out who's going to make a move. We're going to be on to the next topic, though. This is definitely a storyline to keep your eye on, folks, though, because I don't know what's going to happen with Brax or AZK, but it is going to be interesting. Next topic, still keeping it. We already sort of mentioned it, but version 1 has picked up a team. I'm very excited for this lineup. We've got Vanity, Zelsis, Effys, Penny, and Player One coming over to play for version 1. Version 1, kind of not an org most people are familiar with. They own the Minnesota Roker CDL franchise spot. They're connected to the Minnesota Vikings, so there's substantial money and resources backing them. They're now getting into Valorant. I think they've got a Rocket League team. Sorry for the Windows bing. Yeah. If someone just heard that, my computer's trying to restart on me. But what do you make of this roster? Because I've got some thoughts, but let's hear yours first, Ryan.
Yeah, I mean, I'm really excited to see this all come in. It's a similar thing to what happened with Anbox as well, with them on in the New York Excelsior in the Overwatch League and in the Subliners. So it is more of a outstretch, I suppose, of an org being formed around these franchise spots in other games. I hate the name personally, version 1, but I like the branding, the color, the whole idea that it's a first draft and it will continue to be alternate and adjusted as time goes on. That's a cool little thing to have. But yeah, this roster might be that, and it's interesting to know. You know, you've got Vanity in there from Chaos, the IGL, who's been looking to move over. Player One and Effys previously from Gen G, more veteran talent in the game, if you can even call it that, considering it's been 8-9 months. Yeah. And then Penny and Zelshish, who I have no experience with. I've not seen them play on any tier 2, tier 3 teams. I would assume that they would have some Counter-Strike backing, considering how they know these guys in particular. And so if they are playing the duelists, for example, if people are playing the agents that you're seeing on screen, they'll certainly be the place to keep an eye on, because the Phoenix, the Jet, you would imagine that these players would be able to show up on these kind of agents.
Yeah,
I hope so.
Yeah, you certainly would. Penny has a lot of mechanical skill. He's one of these young aim gods who is sort of starting to come into his own in Counter-Strike. Had good opportunities with a couple of rosters, and ultimately made the decision to swap over to Valorant. So I think there's a lot of.
Has he played in any teams?
No, not yet.
Have done anything?
I think he played with Never Done, which was where Vanity, Zelsis, and Penny were working together, and Effys actually was, I believe, playing with that. But no, he hasn't. For Vanity, Zelsis, and Penny, it's their first time signed. Vanity filled in for that Beast Coast lineup. But this is their first time with serious opportunity. But yeah, and then we've got the experience, as you said, all 9 months of it coming through from Effys and PL1. It's an interesting setup. It's a very interesting setup on this team, and I think there's a lot of talent. I think they could do quite a bit. And then just frankly, as you said, it's really good to see an org like this getting involved. There's deep pockets. I agree, the name is dumb. Just call them the Vikings, or do what they did with the CDL League and make it some other Viking adjacent name.
Roker's just a cool name to name like an org as well, right?
Yeah.
I thought they'd go in that direction. It's the same as Ambox, though. Ambox is a pretty weird name overall, but it's exciting to see. We feel like all of the orgs have moved in, especially after Evil Geniuses put together a team. You felt that would be it for Valorant, but no, an actual, you could say tier 1 organization, considering they own franchise spots in other big games.
Yeah.
That this could potentially something that goes on to do quite a lot of work. So I'm very excited to see an actual team come in and look like real contenders to maybe even get to Masters and VCT, the Champions Tour, the Champions event. I don't know. Just call it Worlds, because that's what it is at the end of the year. It's Valorant Worlds.
Make it the bracket.
The naming drives me insane, because it's like VCT challenges, VCT masters, just I don't know, call it a European spring split or whatever it is. It's very confusing. But anyway,
I think maybe they'll come up with better nomenclature after a year. You just got to play it out. But I agree. It does become word soup very quickly. Other announcements. We'll just keep going down the list. This one was kind of in the cards. We kind of knew this was coming. Poise has been announced to C9. He's their 6th player. They're playing with a 6-man roster. I like this a lot. I'm coming around to the concept of 6-man rosters just because of how much diversity it can give you in terms of what agents you want to bring into a setup. But Poise seems talented, seems like a rising talent, good name. Obviously, Cloud9 are looking to develop that as they're just continuing to try and, reformat, develop, figure things out. I don't know. Any strong thoughts on this one, Ryan?
not in particular. Like, I'm excited to see this guy play. He's been top of the rankings on countless occasions and leaderboards in actual ranked as Doink Machine. But seeing him in an actual competitive environment surrounded by players that can
really wish he kept
hone
that
him
name.
in to be that. He should have just stayed as that, yeah. But in all honesty, I'm just excited to see what he does. But Cloud9 as well, I don't think they should be really on anybody's radar for quite some time. Nothing against them. I just think that this roster could do quite a lot of work, but we need to see it develop, right? Especially with all of the new players coming in, all of the adjustments that they have to make. You've got to give it a bit of time before this team can actually show us what they're capable of. So if they bomb out, if they get upset in the open qualifiers, for example, you don't want to panic too much. It's just going to be a longer process now that TENS isn't part of the roster, which I think gives Cloud9 a little bit of respite, right? They can just kind of go, right, let's just take this slow and build a good team instead of panicking at the fact that we have the best player in the world. We need to build around him.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, we're going to be hopping across the pond here. These are a series of announcements that were kind of already known, but have now been confirmed. Entropic have a roster. It's Taimu's team with Hip and Twistin and the whole squad. This team has been playing together for a little bit. I think they were already linked to Entropic. I don't know whether that was publicly yet, but it's confirmed now.
Rumored, yeah.
They're doing very well. They did very well in the VCT Challengers run. What do we make of this squad?
I genuinely think it's a contender, and I think even though it was a best of one, you got to give Heretics credit here, but they beat Heretics on Bind. So this is a team that could potentially be scary. I think you are looking at a really good support lineup with Taimu and Vladidi from Purple Cobras, who made it to the First Strike main event, but it's Twistin that's going to be the player that could potentially show up. We've seen a lot of players, even over these games that we had in the previous week, kind of show up like Muri out of nowhere and do some great work. Twistin is going to be that. Mark my words, Twistin, if he isn't on your radar now, he will be by the end of the year. He is a genuine talent, and seeing him on a roster that can actually compete, sorry, Isuba, but, I think is a really good thing going forward, and this team could provide to be very scary down the line too.
All right, speaking of new teams, we're on to the next one. We got a lot to get through, and then we got all the VCT to talk about. Vitality. This is another team that everybody knew it was happening. It's happening. They're signed by Vitality. This is the team that was Fragon as coach was building up with FuQ and, everyone there. They've been playing together for a little while. This has been rumored. I think Nell and Halo were first tweeting about this like a month ago. So it's been in the works for a while. Ryan, thoughts on this squad?
A really good team. We saw that in the Red Bull home ground event. They didn't qualify for First Strike, namely for the team that we're about to talk about in a second, First Strike for Challengers. But there's still a lot of potential with these guys. Again, there's a lot of teams that could potentially be the top 5 teams down the line. It's super competitive at the top right now. And you would expect to see this Vitality team, much like I said about Cloud9, it will take time to develop, but these are some of the more underrated players coming into a team, and they will surprise people for sure.
All right. And then I think we've got, I'm just going to talk about it too. OG are picking up Monkey Business. That's still happening. They're tweeting about it. Their CEO is teasing it. Come on, everybody's announcing their rosters. Monkey Business just did really well. What's the holdup, guys? What's the holdup here? This is the next one that's like the semi-confirmed roster that needs to just be officially confirmed. I don't know. You heard anything there? Are there snags going on, Ryan?
Well, you have the Valorant champions to Twitter constantly tweeting at OG, which I'll be honest, I don't think is a smart move, because if that deal falls through, like it just has negative impact. If it's just if it's Halo talking about it, sure, whatever. But when you have an official channel kind of teasing it, I don't think it's the best look. Like OG will announce it in their own time. But you have the OG owner tweeting a lot about the team, showing their support. So it's very much looking likely, but still, it's not done yet. We just got to treat him as if they're monkey business, even though it is OG at this point, most likely.
It's so odd. It's like, come on. Everybody knows. Figure out the contracts. Hammer out the details. Get it done. They're competing at this point. They're getting good results. Put your name on them so they can get good results with your name on them.
It's good traction, right? I think as soon as you see the result that they got to actually qualify for Challengers 2, you're like, they're us. Hello. No, it's not monkey business anymore. Even though, personally, I think that the monkey business logo is much better than OG's when you look at it. So seeing it just sort of slap it around. You've got Godzilla vs. Kong coming out soon as well. So it's just great branding. It all comes in together, and yeah, you can't write off the monkey.
I mean, it should really be done. It should really be done. Maybe OG just adopts that brand, brings it into the other esports. I'll see Monkey Business CS going on.
Business. That's the interesting thing. Like, Monkey Business was the original OG name for OG.
Was it?
And so, yeah. That's how people realized that it was the case. I can't talk about a particular story to do with Red Bull. It's kind of funny, all things considered, but if it gets announced, I can talk about it then, because, yeah, I'd love to see OG in here, in all honesty. And I think even though they played poorly in the Red Bull home ground, very poorly against Summon, now Fnatic, it was a really good result against Guild. Not groundbreaking, it wasn't insane. I think Guild played kind of poorly, as we'll talk about in a second, but really good showing to see what Monkey Business are capable of.
Yeah, be nice to see. We're going to go ahead and talk about the VCT events that took place this past weekend. We'll start off with EU, since we were just talking about some of the EU teams. First, we got to talk about this. I think that it's all the podcasts have been doing it, right? There was that call to arms from Veli. I don't know if you saw that pop around on Twitter. Of every podcast should talk about how stupid this format is until the format gets changed.
I was on that podcast straight afterwards as well, so I'm more than happy. The thing is, like, from somebody in my position that I would consider to maybe have like a foot in the door for Europe, I know that people like champion for me are in my corner, which I absolutely appreciate that people
as they
want
should
to see me involved. Yeah, like it's a nice humbling feeling, because the first question that you ask when this kind of thing happens, look at First Strike when they bring in Lothar and Jonas, and I'm sat there thinking, the first thing you think is just, am I not good enough? Like, am I not worthy of being noticed for these kind of events? I'm not saying that I should have been there. I'm not saying that
I'll say it.
Owe me those opportunities.
I'll say it. You've earned it.
I just feel like
I'll say what you can.
Yeah, I know, but I guess it's just a point. Like, from my perspective, I've tried to do as much as possible to get noticed, and then it's just basically the long shot of it is immediately when you see roster moves come in for talent, you take it personally. I don't think you can really help it in a lot of cases. It's purely business, and at that point, Riot didn't know I existed, so fair enough. But on that day, I took it very personally. I was very gutted about it, and so a lot of this stuff is really, I don't want to say anything that would get me on a list of not being able to cast Riot stuff anymore, but it is important to sort of highlight that this isn't really like good enough. Like, if there's logistical issues as to why they're all best of ones, why it's all strung over 4 days instead of NA doing it over 2 weeks. You've got the open qualifiers this week, close qualifiers next for North America. For Europe, it's all within the span of 4 days next week, right?
Yeah.
So it is a really tricky thing. And obviously I put out a tweet before where somebody was highlighting all of the different broadcast channels that the LEC are on, all of the partners they have on having it broadcasted in different platforms, different languages, different sponsorships. And that's the reason why we don't have co-streaming for Europe, because there's so many hoops to jump through. And because it's the European Union and all of these different European countries having their own laws, you have to make sure that it's okay everywhere. And to be honest, it isn't worth the hassle in some cases. North America, it's just, we can decide this for ourselves because we are one united country for the most part. And Canada's pretty chill about that kind of thing too. And so I do feel bad for Riot, because it can be really difficult to get all of these things sorted. And when you look at the LEC, it's profitable because they have all of these partnerships and all of these broadcasts and stuff. So it's kind of like undercutting, but for businesses instead of casting. It's just a logistical nightmare for Riot, but I feel bad for them. But I still feel it's important for the community to go, this can be better. Even if it's double elimination, that's better. If it's just best of threes instead of best of ones and still single elimination, that is better. It's just, it can be improved in the right ways, and it's up to Riot to, I guess, realize that and to do something about it, which I think they will, in all honesty. I think they have to at this point.
All right, I'm going to make your points a little more bluntly here because I don't think I'm getting hired by Riot anytime soon.
I'll hide
any
screen
regards.
whilst you do it. I'll just go down here. I'll bunker up whilst you say what you want to say.
This EU format is dumb. It's dumb and it's bad. BO1s all the way through to the round of 32, single elimination where you then finally have best of threes, are dumb. That's fine. It's a 512 team bracket. I get that that's nuts, but just cut the teams off at some point. You don't need to have every squad that's ever existed signing up. It's just insane. So then you're not broadcasting any games. No one actually gets to watch the teams. You're watching score bots to try and figure out what the hell is going on. That's not a way to build an esport audience. That's not a way to build investment in teams. That gives these teams that are coming up with these big upset wins where they take down a squad that should be way better than them, it gives them no credit because no one can see the damn game. So instead of getting hyped for the players, you're looking at the scoreboard and going, how'd that happen? Nobody actually knows. Nothing's being streamed until the very end, and it's all condensed into a few days. So if the teams are having a shitty day, tough, you're done, you're out, you're gone. And then the Challengers itself is just a round of 4 BO3s, one round, win one match, and you're through to the next one? What? This is the stupidest thing ever. I'm going to pull up the format here again so you can look at it. There is no winner. There's just 4 teams. They get an equal split of a prize pool for a really awkward number of euros. 4,375 euros. You don't want to play out the rest of that bracket? Even if you're going to do it single elim? Come on, man. How do you expect people to get invested in an esport if none of the games are interesting and the few ones that are broadcast, there's no finality? You don't get to say who was the best because they didn't figure it out. They didn't go the way. You can't argue. There's no lower bracket runs. There's no nothing. It's a bad format, man. It's a bad format. All right, and I'll also throw in another one here because I know you can't say this. Hire Ryan. This guy's done so much video content. He's doing this podcast. He's appeared on every podcast at this point, I'm pretty sure. The man knows his stuff. He knows the random qualifier team you've never heard of where one guy was maybe involved in a different esport 3 years ago. Hire this man. He could give context and content to your team. He's earned the spot. All right, that's my rant. Oh, it's a stupid garbage format. Let's talk about the games. All right.
Yeah. Which one do you want to start with?
Let's start with NIP G2 because this is the one I always bug you guys about is G2. They lost. NIP looked good again.
Yeah.
Exciting. Talk about it, Ryan.
It's pretty ridiculous, really, because I still consider G2 after this. You know, a lot of people saying that G2 shouldn't have dropped David P. Even Pansy sort of brought it up, like all of these questions being like, Ryan will answer them at some point. He's scribbling notes for a video at some point, which is coming. It's not, I was going to do it today, but I decided to just sulk instead. But in any case, it is just one of these things where it's a new team that have had to adapt. They do look really promising, but they got outplayed by NIP. The thing about G2 is they're very good at having a certain bully play style where, certainly on the attack, you as a defender can't play passive because G2 will take that space. You give them an inch, they'll take a mile. It's that kind of thing. But G2 are very good at forcing you out to play aggressively when you really don't want to. Using smokes, using, I don't know, like molly utility to force you off an angle where you're trying to hold it to be super sneaky. They will force you out into a fight that you're not ready for. Not only were NIP playing aggressively to take those fights, but they were winning them too. Look at Icebox. You've got the Viper wall that you put across B just to sort of cut it off. NIP were happy to go beyond that into the danger zone and win those duels against some of the best mechanical aimed players within the region. This was a really good day for NIP. I don't know if this kind of result happens again, though. I think this is a nice kick up the ass for G2 to improve some of their sort of formations, the foundations of their play, so to speak. And so it's just a really good series to watch. But I think when you watch the Bind game, especially, that G2 won pretty handedly, you get a good understanding of how G2 like to play the game. Then if you go back and watch the first series on Icebox, you understand what NIP were doing so well. It was the same on Split. It was just the game that G2 wanted to play. They couldn't because NIP were outsmarting them and out-aiming them.
All right. And on to the next one. We're going to talk about Monkey Business, 2-0 in Guild. I'm really sad that Sam's not on the show for this one because this is my continual assault on her is her bonk fandom. Guild, again, much better this time. They actually get to the dance. And then they just sort of it was like a 13-9 and a 13-4, I think, were the score lines on those two games.
Yeah. I think the Guild had a very easy bracket to get there, and I think they looked the poorest team out of the 8 that we saw on broadcast, at least. Maybe
Yeah.
even some of the others that we saw the day prior with Team Vitality and Racy Reg. Guild, just the fundamentals were completely off. Everybody looked lost. They tried to set plays up. They picked Ascent, which is their best map, a map that they had a really good track record on until first strike, Red Bull, Home Ground, and Challengers, where they lost it dominantly again in 2-0 fashion, right? So it's just looking really out of character for them. Yassine's been struggling, putting Safe on Killjoy, like I mentioned last week, seems like such a waste of that guy's potential. But from speaking to Baba, hearing him talk in interviews too, it really was a case of just see where the chips fall, what this team needs to work on, what we can do. I don't think we saw any set strategies coming in necessarily. It was more of a case of we haven't played in a while, we haven't played with this team at all, so let's just play these games, see what it's like, see what we need to work on. If this is the same look that we get from Guild and Challengers 2 and Challengers 3, then I'll be very much concerned going forward. But right now, I'm willing to give them the benefit of the doubt and just say they need a bit of time to work on their shit, in all honesty.
See, I'm running out of patience in that regard because yes, okay, it's a new team, but it's not that new a team. It's not. They've played together before. They've been together for a little while now. Like
I get you.
There are newer
it's
teams.
Just Safe, right? I see it with a move bringing Safe back into a team and dropping Goffy.
Yeah.
It almost adds like a reset to the timer that I have in my head for this team. You got to give it certain passes, I suppose. And I think bringing in Safe was a really good move for the team to improve it. But after 2 best of 3s that we've seen from them, we haven't obviously seen how they played through the qualifiers and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Like I said, if we see them on broadcast play this poorly against teams that they really should be beating, no offense to Monkey Business, like I said before, they played a really good game. But to be fair, Guild should be winning that. They need to prove that they are that caliber of team, and they didn't. In fact, every ounce of their play looked off and it looked weak, and they really need to work on it, so they should be starting now.
All right, so we'll give them one more shot, but they're running out. They're running out of chances. All right, Wave. I need to ask you about Wave. I need to ask you a lot about Wave because these guys were not on my radar ahead of this particular Challenger series, right? I did not know much of anything about them at all. They 2-1 Fnatic. That was a hell of a series. 16-14 overtime on, I think it was Haven. That was the middle point of that series that really flipped the narrative. And then 2 13-6s going either way for a 3-mapper. Wave Esports, talk to me about them. What happened here?
Yeah, it's a tale of 3 maps, in all honesty. We saw Bind first, which is Fnatic's best map. I think they're the best Bind team in all of Europe, to be honest. I'd love to see G2 versus Fnatic on this map because they're both really good on Bind. That was straightforward, 1-0 up for Fnatic at that point. Haven was on the knife's edge. Both teams could take it, but we saw individual show-offs from Wave, which we'll touch on in a second. But Split, I think the Fnatic's comp on Split was pretty weak. They had been playing it for quite some time. It's basically boils down to having the double controllers with the Viper and Omen, maybe a Brimstone in some cases, what they play on Bind, for example. But we just saw Wave holding W a lot of the time on their attack. They won every single attacking round that they had on this map, and that's why the reason why they were so dominant on this map. There wasn't enough stall utility coming out of Fnatic. They didn't really have those kind of mollies or Sage slows in order to dictate and change up the play. We've seen a lot more Sage on this map in particular from other teams, and this is why. It's a really good demonstration on what Heretics was so good at when it came to their defending side, stalling these executes and engagements. And if you don't do that, you see players like Muri pop off, just satchel boosting his way onto a site, and Fnatic couldn't slow these guys down when they had the momentum and when they had the speed to execute onto site as well. Speaking of which, Nico on the Sky was a really nice pick. It worked out so well for them. It's always a little bit scary when a team drops a Silver or even a Breach for Sky. Never mind both, which is exactly what Wave did. But Muri, who was typically their Silver player before switching over to Raze full-time, oh my god, he's like a whole different player. He's genuinely one of the better Razes that we've seen. We mentioned players like Yassine, for example. He's starting to fall off the list of best Razes in Europe. I mentioned Twister before for Entropic. He's going to be on the come up. Muri clearly is. There's just going to be more talent in a tournament like this showing its face more. And yeah, the aim, if I don't get to cast Europe, for example, I still want to highlight these guys, even if it is to help out the Mitches, the Pansies, the Yinsus, who know a lot about the scene and could be like, oh, if you don't know anything about, Frenzy Go Kill, I could, share my knowledge with you guys. It's not all about try and be big brain. I just genuinely care about these players and I want to highlight them to the masses because some of them are genuinely insane.
I do want to highlight, apparently Yinsu doesn't know everything about the European scene because she just posted in our chat, oh my god, it took me this long to realize Ryan's surname is Horton. I thought it was Central.
People, so this is a weird story. I've genuinely had hotel bookings for like Blizzard, Hitscan stuff.
With Central as the last name?
Yep.
That's
the
amazing.
worst one is, you know, in Halloween where people change their name to something spooky?
Mm-hmm.
The easy one for me is Ryan Horrorton, like Horrorton. That was on a room booking, and I couldn't actually sign into my hotel because they couldn't find my last name properly. And they were like, "Is your name Horrorton?" And I'm like, "No." Like, well, that's what it's down as. So yeah, great story, that one. Cheers.
Oh, I
it was
love it.
EGX. It was EGX or MCM Comic Con or something.
The best time is when they've already paid you like a bill, so they have your information. They've got your name because you have to for financials, and they still mess it up. That's hilarious. That's amazing.
Yeah, people have called me Mr. Central. I thought that they would know better at this point. It's from Overwatch Central because Hitscan used to be called Overwatch Central, so Ryan Central, you know. I'm not creative, okay? That's the main brunt of it when it comes to usernames.
Well, Mr. Central, we do have one last series to talk about from the Challengers Europe. FPX taking the 2-0 over Liquid. 2 OT games. It's a 2-0 on the scoreboard, but 2 tight overtime games. Break it down for me.
I thought that Team Liquid was the better team in this series, which is funny considering that people would look at Team Liquid and go they were awful on attack. Yes, but FPX weren't much better. In fact, both of these teams were insane on their defenses on both Haven and also on Split. I think Haven was the better match. Both of these games went to double and quadruple overtime, by the way, so they were really close between them. But I think Haven's a really good example of how Team Liquid are very smart on their defense. They're playing very passively. All of the stuff that we will speak about with North America and info starving, as Shazam calls it, Europe have been working with that for quite some time, and I think Team Liquid have a really good counter to it with how passively they play. They're very reactive in how much they back up, how much they give space to then retake it again. But they also made some horrendous mistakes. Eccles especially lost a couple of clutches where he was mostly unlucky. Timings trying to sneak up on somebody, and then Shadow just turns around and domes him, losing a one-on-one clutch against Angel. Just those kind of moments where you kind of go, Team Liquid are going to look a bit weaker here, but honestly, I think FBX should be very much counting themselves lucky that they took this 2-0. Because I think if they lose that Haven map, which in all honesty, they should have, if it wasn't for Team Liquid making some howlers, then that would have been a hell of a series. It's just a shame we were denied that almost. But a really good showing from FBX. Not an easy game, but you're going to take those every day of the week.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, well, we're going to hop across the pond now. That's what we got for Challenges Europe. We ranted enough about this one, talked about the matchups. We're going to talk about NA, and my first point on talking about NA is going to be, this is what a format's supposed to look like, folks. Look at that bracket. Double elim, best of threes up until the final with a map advantage for the winner bracket team in the grand final. A lower bracket run from Sentinels. This is the stuff that esports storylines are made of, Ryan. This is what we should be getting. This is what Europe has been deprived of. Genuine narratives. Instead of one BO3 where you then have no context about how the winners stack up against each other, you have multiple matchups between teams to really contextualize and give you an idea of who just got lucky in one series and who's really got it. I mean, this is what a tournament's supposed to look like. Come on!
There's some key things to sort of note here. Sideshot said one. If this was the same format in North America as it was for Europe, Sentinels wouldn't even have made it to the closed qualifiers because they would have lost 1-0 to Serenity because they went 1-0 down in that best of three. Also, 43 best of threes were on broadcast for North America over the past couple of weeks, which was great. I was genuinely feeling sick from the amount of Valorant we had on screen. It was great. It was like just eating a buffet and feeling sick afterwards, but you have no regrets. In Europe, we had 8, I think it was. And it's just a shame as well because, you know, even before we get onto the talent talking, the talent are only working like 3 or 4 days in a fortnight, which isn't an awful lot considering they're the exclusive talent for the region, you know? At least in North America for Nerd Street Gamers, you might have Tanner Metro just working the open qualifiers. He works the same amount of days, you know? It's that kind of thing where it's you want to just have more games on broadcast to bring more opportunities to everybody, right? Observers, talent, obviously. But also, if I'm somebody like Carlos and I have to deal with like the European format, for example, it's the best one you go out, your games aren't even broadcasted, the first thing you got to do is just knock on Riot's door and go, hey, we're a franchise partner for LEC. Obviously, we want to be involved for the Valorant franchise league down the line. This isn't fine with me so far. I am not happy with the state of how things are going at the moment. So I think with everything that's going on at the moment with Europe, I think it requires everybody to kind of go, hey, this isn't okay. But obviously, those that are a part of Riot, even the other regions, if somebody from North America comes over and goes, hey, that's not okay, which I can imagine a lot of them would suggest and say that, the teams obviously that are looking to be part of whatever franchise league, if we have one, are going to be upset at Ryan if their games aren't being streamed, for example.
Yes. All right, now back to NA. Enough of the EU talk. Enough of it, Ryan. I know it was a travesty, but we're going to leave it alone. We're going to talk about these games because I loved the storylines we got coming out of this Challengers event. So Sentinels get knocked down to the lower bracket. I'm going to pull up the bracket again just to show how impressive this was. They lose to Luminosity 2-0, get knocked to the lower bracket. I called my shot and said they were going to get knocked out of the tournament to begin with. Apparently, I was wrong about that one because Sentinels rediscovered why they're considered the best team, certainly one of, if not the best team in North America. Beat Andbox, whatever, that's a fine one. Beat a Gen G team that was outperforming expectations. Beat an upstart XSET team that looks incredible. Came back for revenge against Luminosity in a nail-biter of the series, and then dominated the grand finals, winning 3 maps. It shows 3-1 on the board. That was just the map advantage coming out of the upper bracket for Immortals. How about this Sentinels team? You said you either wanted them to get knocked out first round or win the thing. They won it, Ryan. What's your take on this team now?
I mean, you can't argue with it anymore, right? There's been so many question marks on how good this team is. There's been a lot of disappointing results, even when they won. You could consider them not playing to their potential. The Gen G game is a startler example of that. But they royal roaded the whole tournament. They beat all of the competition. The only team they didn't run to in this part was Envy, but they beat Envy in the Nerd Street Gamers Winter Championships quarterfinal, right? So you could argue that other TSM and 100 Thieves who didn't qualify, so it's not really Sentinels' fault, they beat all of the contenders around them to solidify themselves a solid spot. And in a tournament which you consider didn't really matter as much because it was just prize money at the end of it. They qualified, they could have just kind of, pulled out the white claws and just sat back a little, but no, they proved to everybody they had a real anime return to form, right? You have Shazam molding on stream, getting super angry, and the whole community just ridiculing him and the team for having no strategies. And then he comes out and just outsmarts the other teams by playing like them but better. I think that's a really good result, and I think it's easy to go, oh yeah, Sentinels no brain their way in. There is strategy involved in this kind of game. It might not be the most extensive playbook when it comes to making sure that the Silver recon bolt hits over here, making sure that you throw a molly over there. It is just the meta that we're going into with this info-starving, high-contact playstyle. And Sentinel showed that they understood it. They even defined it. Instead of calling it high-contact, they called it info-starving, which I think is super important. And they countered it by just playing it better.
Absolutely. So, I mean, that's Sentinels. Redemption Tour. Very happy to see them back on top. I say that as someone who is calling their death, right? And the way I view this now is, if we look at this tournament, if we look at the way that the VCT's gone in North America, we have the new world order of Luminosity, Immortals, XSETs coming up, and then you've got the old god of Sentinels that is holding down the fort for the old teams. We haven't really seen, I mean, obviously TSM 100 Thieves get knocked out in the qualification. We don't see that much from them. Hopefully we're going to see a little bit more from them this next go around, but still, they've got to prove themselves all over once again. Sentinels is sticking around. Let's talk about the other qualified teams here. Immortals, LG, XSET. I love it. I love it. It's just the changing of the guard. It's a complete new world order. Did any of this shock you? I know we were all pretty high on Immortals and LG. XSET was a bit more of a surprise. What do you take away as your big storyline from this?
I think it is that LG and XSET should be considered tier 1 teams. I think I said this after their results to actually get to those qualifying spots. Beating the likes of Envy especially is such a core part of that. But that these aren't upsets anymore. You can't consider them upsets. You've got to see them as they are, which is the better team winning in a lot of these scenarios. And so I really like the fact that we've seen these teams that have been grinding in every single tournament, that looked mechanically sound and had upset potential. But you always asked, all right, yeah, they could beat the NRGs, they could beat the Gen Gs, that, maybe even beat Cloud9. That's a bit of a shock. TSM lost to XSET, by the way, with a best of 3. It's like, all right, yeah, they can upset, but is it consistent enough? it has to answer that question, and the answer has to be yes.
Yeah.
And that's the really exciting thing about this is they bring a whole new play style of Valorant. And yeah, it's going to upset some people with maybe how dull it seems that you just have a Reyna going in and clicking heads. But really, it asks the questions of the teams to be better than that, to outthink it in some cases. I think Envy got into their heads a bit about it too much by changing up Food and Caboose over again to play a more European, more controlled style of playstyle. And I think that Envy's playstyle would work, but it needs time to flesh itself out, hence why we didn't see them qualify. But yeah, the fact that you saw LG beating Sentinels, beating Envy, you got XSET beating Envy, beating NRG to get those qualifying spots, you can't say that they didn't deserve it or they got an easier bracket.
No.
Not at all.
Yeah, it was the hard run. They dealt with being the lower seeds. They battled through. I mean, to be honest, again, I'm going to go back to what I said in our pre-show for this. There was no easy path. That was one of the beautiful things about this tournament. If you looked at it, there was no easy path. Honestly, the only team that went out kind of meekly, I would say Anbox and NRG. Both went out pretty meekly. They didn't do that much. But even then, they were looking like they were teams that could maybe pop off in the pre. But there was no easy path. So the guys who made it through, that's huge.
We kind of talked about it as well on like the Friday show before the closed qualifier games where, you know, I said for Anbox, and I stand by this. In fact, I feel it was more proven than anything that they're a good team, but they should never have been considered at the tier 1 level.
Yeah.
Like they won top 1 tournament, they beat everybody they should beat, but they very much feel like the gatekeepers, right? That they are the team that beats everybody below them but can't beat anybody above them. We saw Gen.G being like that before. It's very similar. But then Gen.G got Sean, and they got MCE. And now suddenly, that team looks a lot more sharper and scarier. For Anbox, I still think there's a chance that they qualify, that they just play better Valorant than some other people. But considering the likes of XSET, LG, even NRG and Gen.G in some cases, you look at those teams and you go, Anbox doesn't really have a hope in hell of beating them, it feels like in some cases. Yeah, you have Android. Yeah, you have Yeaster. But it just seems that when those series come in, we don't get to see those pop-off moments as much from Anbox. Those players in particular just kind of drop off a little bit more quiet from them, and really they need to be owning the show. Look at Shut Up. He's one of the main reasons why Models look so good right now.
Yeah.
But it's not an over-reliance on him, right? It's just he is the shining star for that team.
I do want to say as well, and I'm going to beat this drum, we've sort of already touched on it, Gen.G, very pleasant surprise. Look, they didn't make the top 4. They were just out of it. I think they played incredibly. I think that they were, considering how much they're still defining, how much they're changing, how much they're bringing in and learning. You know, player like Kusta is still learning the game, to be quite frank, and they're very much reshaping. I thought they were impressive. I think they're going to be a very dangerous contender this next go around. Obviously, got to make it all the way through again, but they could. I'm feeling good about them.
Yeah.
So.
Sure. I'm super excited to see them play more, especially with, as we highlighted, MC being the coach now.
Yeah.
Like, the playbook is going to get a lot deeper and
he's
break the rules a little.
He's introducing a lot of new applications. He's changing up the way they use some agents as well, where it's just they're going to play differently. You're going to want to keep an eye on Gen.G games because they're going to do things that other teams haven't done before, that they don't feel anyone is doing before. And as they start to integrate more agents into their toolkit, because right now it's been very much about implementing the fundamentals, getting some of their ideas down, and sticking with a very set pool so that they can develop as a team, as a starting 5. They're going to start to integrate more of those agents. They're going to start to integrate more off-the-wall ideas as they try and challenge people. Less, 5-man frenzy pushes on the pistol round, more thought-out plans. This is going to be a team to keep an eye on. So we've got the Open again. We're starting over from square one.
Yeah.
Right? We're starting over. All over. It starts tomorrow, the NA Open. There's only 4 spots now. There's only 4 spots. We've got the teams that made it to the close this time. We've got the TSMs, the T1s. We've got version 1 coming in now. We got 100 Thieves coming back. Back with Nitro. This is going to be crazy. There's so much power coming into an open qualifier where, you lose one series, you're gone. You don't even make it to the double elim period. This one is going to be even tougher than the first go around.
Definitely. Like, it's just a good sign for the region when you have this much talent and anything can happen. It means that you're required to pay attention to some of these games happening at the moment, right? I think there wasn't a broadcast for 100 Thieves. Let's not go into a whole discussion of like community casters and stuff right now, but I guess people assumed that 100 Thieves wouldn't have any problems qualifying, so we missed that game. But now suddenly there is going to be a broadcast watching 100 Thieves because people want to see how they respond, how good they look with Nitro. If we see a fire lit under their asses, for example, and just see like a next level Dicey showing up, for example, you have all of these narratives starting to build when you have a consistent circuit like this, with all of the games broadcasted, the opportunities, the comebacks, and all that kind of stuff. We're really starting to see what Valorant looks like in a circuit. And if this doesn't excite you about potential franchises in the future, or maybe even better systems than, say, we have in League or Counter-Strike, some kind of hybrid between the two, I don't know. But it does tell you that the future of this game is looking bright when you have so many interesting storylines just developing on their own without even being broadcasted in some cases, right? So it should be a really good sign for what's to come in Valorant going forward.
It's really exciting because it genuinely makes a system where I am legitimately invested in the future of 15 teams, 15 plus teams, where I think that any of them could potentially rise with a change here or there, or a change in coaching, a change in play style, up towards the top. And that's just an incredible situation where, oh, go ahead. The finger came up.
The fact that we have Brax and Tens almost being like free agents at the moment, and we're kind of going, ooh, where could they go? On top of a season, this isn't like Roster Mania. It's not like the thingy show, Jacob Wolf show with Evil Geniuses before the league season starts. This is happening on top of all of these games at the moment. Is there any wonder that the other podcasts out there, we've always gone over our time because of course, but there's like 4-hour episodes coming out with some of these guys because there's just so much to talk about with all of the things in between. It's just chunky. Like genuinely, I feel sick digesting this much Valorant right now because there's just so much of it and all of it is so juicy.
It really is. It makes it so much fun to talk about. Now we're going to wrap up the show with a less fun topic because we're, as you said, over our time. We're coming to the end of it. We're going to talk about we're going back to EU. Can't stay away. Can't stay. It's like you're driving past a car crash. You can't look away. This is less fun topic. Banks tweeted this out this morning. This might be the end of Valorant for Mitch and I as a duo. He had a whole twit longer attached to it. Here's the twit longer. Oh no, wait, I pressed the wrong button. That's not the twit longer. Hang on, we're getting there. Here's the twit longer if you want to read all of that. I'm not going to read all of that on air. But basically, he and Mitch have been trying to work together as a duo. They've been trying to get VCT work, and they've had it confirmed to them by somebody that that's not going to happen this year, that they are not going to, Mitch is going to be hired on for the VCT events, but Banks will not be. So this duo is dead in the water for Valorant, effectively, because it feels like this is pretty much all of the work that's coming in for EU Valorant. Now, this would seem to confirm as well that they've got set talent. Unclear whether that is the case for everybody or what's going on here. Every event being run by Freaks for You. It's all a little messy and weird, and there's a lot of conversation going on about it on Twitter of, are the people who deserve to cover these events covering these events? Is it weird that this appears to be the format that this company is going to run all of VCT EU this way? It's a bit disappointed. It's a bit confusing. What's your take on this, Ryan? I know you've got a lot of personal investment, as we already covered. This is very disappointing news for you, but
so I think the main thing to sort of highlight is that from the sounds of it, and again, this could be, I wouldn't necessarily say hyperbolic, but it might not be necessarily how it translates. It might just be a thing for Banks in particular, where they said that they're set for talent for the rest of 2021. That's fine.
Oh, did we just lose him?
Europe from working other regions. I am more than happy to sort of accept as a European caster, okay, I'm fine. I missed out on doing First Strike in Europe. Again, it was gutting, especially, when I've tried to be like the not so much the expert on Europe, but I tried to keep up with it throughout its whole lifespan and all of where Vladidi used to play, for example. I remember him playing on the team with Spacebud in the first tournament that G-Dolph ran 3 days into the closed beta. Like, I think that's what I could maybe provide, the esports historian, so to speak. I can get out my big puffer jacket in the corner if you really want as well, but the point is that I am more than happy to kind of like let the chances of Europe go. It's a smaller region. There's not as many games broadcasted. If I could do North America, I was doing North America. I did First Strike in NA with you guys. I did Community Cast for UMG. I did the Winter Championship. I was doing fine without Europe. But now I don't have any choice. And what that does is it not only impacts me, it impacts, of course, Sam on the show. Mm-hmm. It affects Vince, Tom Biz, even people like Zesht. Maybe even Ender, as he was sort of sticking his foot into casting a bit of Valorant at the same time too, right? We don't have that luxury to find work in other places. We are forced into one region, and what that does is it immediately sets our sight on being one of the 5 people potentially getting work. Now, I do want to say, for people like Pansy, Mitch, Yinsu, Hypok, Lofar as well, it's really nice to see casters know that they have that work coming over the year. That's a big complaint for talent, is they know 2 days ahead of time that they're doing an event and they can't necessarily plan for it. That a lot of the time, the second half of this year, they don't know what they're doing and they're going to panic about getting that kind of work. So it's nice to have some sense of consistency and know that they have that work in the bag. But it is kind of, well, it's very disheartening to know that there's not really going to be many chances coming through for some people.
Yeah.
Not even just me, Tombiz, Vince. Like, I feel hopeful that personally, I feel hopeful that the regional lot would be rescinded at some point, because I feel like the pros definitely don't outweigh the cons, and I think the Riot have received a pretty big backlash for that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And so I could see them maybe changing their minds on that in the future. And also, like, I'm hoping that maybe they want somebody on the analyst desk. But who's to say that they don't just pick up Jonas again, right? And so I'm sat here and I'm genuinely, honestly sitting like, what's the point? What's the point of me even doing this kind of thing if I'm sort of putting in all this work trying to make content on the European scene, and they're just going to bring in content creators, which I also am, by the way, with Hitscan, right? You know, like, it sounds selfish and maybe a bit arrogant, and I accept that. But like, I've just got to sort of share my frustration, I suppose, on that kind of thing. And it's tough. I'm just going to sort of keep grinding on it. I don't want to necessarily give up. But
No.
I know a lot of people who have had moderate success in casting Valorant from Europe kind of just go, well, I'm going to go back to Counter-Strike then, because there's nothing for me here.
It's also so narrow-minded with a view to the future, because one of the things you want to do with a nascent esport is you want to develop a talent scene. You want to grow a talent scene. You want to give opportunities for there to be games. And if in Europe, look, if you're only going to broadcast 8 BO3s from every event, and there's only going to be, 6 events over the course of the year, yeah, you only need 5 casters, but that's a stupid way to do it. What was that?
Like, how many casters were involved in NA VCT?
More.
The thing that I like about it is
12?
that you can see the journey on the way, right?
Yeah.
You know, you start with your open qualifiers, you've got Solian at Mind, you've got Tana Metro, you've got those people that kind of made their way by doing some of the community casts before, now getting paid to do work at not the bottom level, but the first step in the right approach.
Entry level.
You move up. Yeah, you get to Doug, you get to Seymour, you get to all those kind of guys. And you know what, Masters? They're going to have DDK and Sean Garris. There's a hierarchy there. And Telemetro can't be like, oh, I wish I had Masters. I deserve it more than Sean Garris and DDK. Of course fucking no. That's not, you got to earn that. And you are going up against people that have been in this industry for 10 years. For Europe, it's kind of like that. I don't personally think that I should be getting anything over Pansy and Hypok. Are you kidding me? But there needs to be a hierarchy. You can't have it, say, for First Strike, you've got those 5 people that did that event. Then Challengers, those 5 people that did the event. Masters, those 5 people that did the event. Challengers 2, those 5 people that did the event. Like, I'm sure there are going to be opportunities for somebody like Vince or Tombiz to come in to maybe cover for somebody else if they're doing another event, or to just experiment. Because, to be honest, they should be doing that if we're looking at a franchise league at some point in the next 2 years. This isn't it, Like, I don't want my opportunity to come at the expense of the other talent that are involved, of course not. But they need to open the doors and just have more people on, even if it's for just a random week in Challengers 2. Give Vince a shot of doing some play-by-play with Mitch. See what that's like. Or put it with Lofar. Put me on the desk. Put Tombiz with Mitch. Put Lofar with Tombiz. Like, there's a lot of experimentation you could do. So the fact that they've gone, we're happy with these 5 for the rest of the year, is just, I don't know what to tell you. Like, I can't do anything. I went from casting a week's worth of events in January to not being able to do anything for the foreseeable future. And all of the other events that are happening in Europe, which aren't many, super small stuff that I'd be undercutting myself and other people to do them, which I should not be doing, as we talked about. I'm just in a rut right now, and I have to hope the things will change.
So this is our plea. Is use some common sense. It's just common sense. Show more games. The people want more games. Show more games. And when you're showing more games, hire more talent to cover those games.
Like don't B stream, right? That's just the kind of thing you want,
Yeah.
That's where it works in tandem. Like, I don't think I deserve anything over anybody.
Yes,
right?
you do.
Riot doesn't owe me anything.
I'll say it.
No, to be serious, Riot doesn't owe me anything. And
I'm
I
being
think
serious.
if you are a caster that's been ruined by this and you think that you deserve more, you don't. This is the thing. This happens in other games, like in Counter-Strike. You've got your ESL talent, you've got your Blast talent. They're just 3 and 5 people there. But you know that in the open qualifiers for, say, Flashpoint, which always have their talent set the way that they do, they bring chances and opportunities for people, and
Yes.
then they work their way up. There is no way for me to start from scratch again in Europe. I could do it in North America, and I had been doing it, but I can't do it here because it's just not enough.
And the problem is also in a game like Counter-Strike where you have a completely decentralized system, there are a lot of different opportunities. You might get your foot in the door with a company like ESL, and you may not work Flashpoint events or BTS events, but you get your chances here and there are a lot of games that need to be covered and are important to cover. In Valorant right now, there is the VCT. The VCT has taken over the calendar. That is the complete focus. We might have a Red Bull home ground every once in a while, an event like that, but they're going to be rare. They're going to be few and far between. The VCT needs more coverage. If you're going to take over the full year of calendar control, expand your coverage, recognize that, give opportunities to continue building the scene. We're not advocating for anyone to lose a job. We're advocating for more total jobs. It's not, there's no subtraction needed. Let's just do addition, folks. Let's improve the coverage of the scene, of the game, give more opportunities, give more engagement, build an audience, give these teams the opportunity to engage with their audience as well. It helps everybody. Bake a bigger pie, more people get a piece. That's going to be our final message here. Plus pies, minus limited opportunities. We're going to go ahead and wrap up the show. We are, as always, over our time. I'm just going to start saying it's an hour-long show, and that way we'll never be over time. It just makes sense. Thank you so much for tuning in, everybody. We are on the air every week at 1 p.m. EST on Wednesdays. Be sure to tune in for Press 4 to Defuse next week. We're probably going to be doing some pre-shows for some of the VCT stuff, but I don't know exactly what the time is going to be on that. So keep an eye out ahead of the VCT schedule. If you were here trying to watch games, they're tomorrow, folks. They're tomorrow on the 11th. That's when the VCT starts for NA again. Be sure to watch, tune in, follow along. The games are going to be nuts. We talked about how much crazy upset potential there's going to be. Who even knows who are going to be the final 4 teams making it through? Like that, the mind, it boggles. But it's going to be cool to watch. Follow us. Follow Ryan at Ryan Central for all that good Valorant news. If you want to know what the hell's going on in EU with no games being broadcasted, this is the man to follow. He'll keep you informed. He'll keep you up to date on what's going on. We'll see you next week. Have a good one, everybody. Enjoy the games. Adios.